Little Rock is indeed one of my favorite cities because it was here that I was first invited to serve in government at a very high level. What happened was that in December 1992, I had been working on the transition for President Clinton, President-elect Clinton at the time, waiting to see if maybe somebody would offer me a job. Finally, I got a phone call and they said, "You've got to come down to Little Rock, but don't tell anybody you're coming, and make some arrangements to get here." So I got here, and I thought that, fortunately, I had seen Governor Riley on the airplane coming down, or his wife, and she said, "You won't believe it, but Dick sat in his room all day long waiting for a phone call, trying to figure out what he was supposed to do." So that I get here, and I thought I was going to be met by somebody, and I wasn't, and I ended up, it was at that stage called the Excelsior Hotel, and I went to my room, and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and they said, "This is CNN, and we just saw you come in." And I just threw the phone down. And then I just sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there. And I thought, well, they've changed their minds. I'm never going to be invited to, I was supposed to be coming down for an interview with the president-elect. And finally, for the most important interview of my entire life, at 11 o'clock, I was invited to come to the governor's mansion, and then was offered what I thought was one of the all-time great jobs. And it was wonderful. That night, we transferred to the Capitol Hotel. I went to have dinner with Warren Christopher. We were sitting in a totally empty dining room, and he said, "Madeleine, I'm going to be Secretary of State." And I said, "Chris, that is great." And I put my hand on his arm, and he said, "Don't show any emotion. People might notice." Anyway, so that was my first time that I was here, and I have to say that being asked to be the ambassador of the United Nations was just a fabulous job. And it was the beginning of 8 fabulous years working for President Clinton, and I think one of the truly great presidents in the United States. Both the president and his administration reflected the qualities that show America at its best, including resilience and optimism, belief in the future, and a passion for doing what is right, whether that meant creating jobs here at home or working to halt ethnic cleansing abroad. In the past week, we've had cause once again to worry about the condition of President Clinton's heart. We're concerned because we know that heart has racked up a lot of mileage, helping people in need, most recently in Haiti. But we also have faith because the prognosis is good and the prayers of millions of people are on his side. I did have the honor of talking with President Clinton yesterday and told him where I was headed, which he knew. I don't know how many of you heard this on TV, but he actually watched them do his operation. He said he had his leg numbed, but he did want to watch how they put the stent into his heart. And I said, only you are so curious that you would want to watch that. On a very personal level, I will forever be grateful to President Clinton for the opportunity that he gave me to serve. As a citizen, I will never cease to admire him for the dedication and commitment that he brought to his job. And as someone who loves to wear pins, I have him to thank for the opportunity to do so in a uniquely expressive manner. The results are now here on display, and I want to thank everyone involved in putting this exhibit together. I think it really is fabulous, and I've just been through it, and I love it. And as I mentioned, Bren is the one that helped this very much. And then I want to thank Dan. I'm in my newest St. John outfit. And the truth is, I wore a lot of St. John outfits before all this, right? So I'm really very, very happy. This book has done very well. It's now in its 5th printing. And I think I finally learned the secret of publishing, which is to write books that have fewer words and more pictures. But the message in both the exhibit and the publication is that jewelry has its own language, and that this language can be both colorful and fun. I happen to love being a diplomat, and this was because of the opportunity to represent the United States and to try to advance our national interests. But let's face it, being a diplomat means going to a lot of meetings, whether they're bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral, or in the case of 8, octagonal. Through the years, my predecessors in government appeared at such meetings in their fancy suits and power ties, not to mention their whiskers and beards. And when I took office, I thought that the time might be right to display pins with attitude. Obviously, the idea of using pins as a diplomatic tool is not found in any foreign policy manual. I started doing it in New York while still serving as ambassador to the United Nations, and this book would not have happened if it hadn't been for Saddam Hussein, because this was the period soon after the first Persian Gulf War when our differences with Iraq were still a major issue. And my instructions were to say perfectly horrible things about Saddam Hussein all day long, which he deserved because he had invaded another country. And I criticized him so much that ultimately a paper in Baghdad printed a poem, and I think it may very well be the world's worst poem. Among other unkind sentiments, the poet invoked the wrath of ancient Sumerian gods, warned that I could not, and I quote, block the road to Jerusalem with a frigate, a ghost, or an elephant, unquote, and referred to me as an unmatched clamor maker and an unparalleled serpent. So I have to admit that in Arabic, perhaps the verses rhymed. In the English translation, not so much. Still, when someone writes a poem about you, it's only polite to respond, and I thought that I might show my appreciation by wearing my snake pin to all meetings with Iraqi officials. And what happened was that the press picked up on the connection. So what began as a personal statement became a public issue. And from that time forward, jewelry had been a signature part of my diplomatic arsenal, because the press said, so why are you wearing that snake pin? And I said, because Saddam Hussein called me an unparalleled serpent. And I thought, this is really fun. So that is how it all began.